First question, could you state your name and title for us, please?
Yep, Kristi Keilen, and I am an owner of K&K Dairy Farms LLC.
Okay, what is your background in agriculture?
So I did not grow up on a farm. I actually married into the farm. My husband grew up on this dairy here. We're now fourth generation dairy farmers. And I did go to school, so I went to Michigan State University for animal science and agronomy.
Okay. Okay. So first question, kind of leading things up. Do you think the general public is able to easily obtain information on GMOs associated with their food?
That's a great question. I wouldn't necessarily say easily attainable. I think questions on GMOs are really hard to answer. It's not tough knowledge to understand, but it's not readily available information. So that's a great question.
So where would somebody go if they were looking for information on that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I would make sure you're looking for scientific studies that are they've been done scientifically, so they have a background to them. They're done by a university or they have some scientific research. There's a lot of biased information out there, especially if you just Google something, which is what everybody does nowadays. You get all sorts of people's blogs and things like that, and really that's just their feelings. But the universities, they actually research this stuff in depth and in an unbiased presentation too. So.
Okay. So just in general, who do you think, or what do you think that GMOs benefit?
Oh, GMOs benefit a whole bunch of stuff, but in general, what they're benefiting is they're benefiting the whole American population. So it's benefiting us and our growing population. So they say, in a few years we're going to be the largest population that we've ever been, and we have land that's diminishing. We have to build, schools and housing for that growing public. So our land's diminishing, so that means we have to grow food, more food than we've ever had to grow for this growing population. And GMOs allow us to do that. They do a whole bunch of different things, but they allow us to grow a lot more food in a smaller parcel. So I think that benefits everybody.
Okay. Just in general, do you think the majority of the American populace is involved in agriculture?
Absolutely not. Being somebody that didn't come from a family in agriculture, they say less than 2% of the American population is involved in agriculture. So that's, huge. Yeah. So, and it makes a difference. I didn't know a lot about it going into it, and I can see where your information's really biased if you didn't, grow up on a farm for sure.
How do you think you could get more people involved in, being a part of agriculture as a whole?
Yeah, so definitely I think farmers need to get out there and have more meet and greet type of things. People need to just tour farms, see farms firsthand. I think agritourism is a great thing. We do a little bit of it here on our dairy. We open up our dairy to the public to come tour, just so that you don't have to be involved on it on a daily basis, but at least see a farm, see how they do things. Okay.
So, in your opinion, what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions associated with the agriculture industry?
Oh boy. So from a dairy farm, I would say it's the fact that they think we abuse our animals. That is absolutely not true. It's actually completely the other way. Most of our cows, a lot of them have names. They eat Oreos. They come up to us to get their neck scratched. They're kind of worse than my own dogs that live at home, to be honest with you. So.
Okay. So what are some steps that you take to ensure that the product you're producing is safe?
Oh, so we have a whole lot of steps. The state of Michigan actually does a lot of that for us. They have a lot of rules and guidelines for us to follow. We have milk inspectors that show up randomly from the state of Michigan. I think that helps, but in general, we want a safe product because we drink it as well. I have a 1.5-year-old and he drinks the milk that we produce. So there's just a lot of things we do. Record keeping is a big portion of it. There's so much record keeping we have to do, and that takes up a lot of our time, but for good reasonings too. And we do a lot of testing of the milk as well before it gets into any of the populations. So between the testing and the paperwork side of it, I don't know how you could make a mistake.
Yeah. You mentioned, government does, random inspections and that, do you think that they should be more or less involved?
I think they should be more involved. I think the inspections, those are great. They come in and, every once in a while, yeah, we're missing a little bit of something. But it's great to have them tell us that because we want to ensure that the food supply is safe for everybody to eat. So when they come, it really helps us out. I think they can definitely be more involved.
Okay. So if I were to ask you, what would your response be to the argument that agriculture or modern agriculture is harming the environment?
So that's an interesting question. Harming the environment, absolutely not. We've done a ton of things so that we don't harm the environment. And in the end, we want to be able to pass that on to the next generation too. So we wouldn't want to harm the environment because, it wouldn't be able to have been passed down to us, or we won't be able to pass it down to our next generation too. Here on our farm, we're MEAT verified. MEAT is Michigan Environmental Assurance Program, and it's a program that's voluntary. The state doesn't require us to do it. It's a lot more paperwork once again, but it ensures that we're hauling manure on the right pieces of land. We have to soil test all the time. We have to actually test our manure for the components that go into that as well so that we know what we can haul in the fields. There's a whole lot to it, but it just really ensures that, more nutrients wouldn't get into the soil than necessary. So,
do you think that, more farmers should be a part of that?
Absolutely. Yep, I think every farmer should be a part of it. Like I said, it's a lot of paperwork and a lot to do, but I think it's really helping with the environmental aspect of it.
Okay. So, what do you think, in your opinion, does the term industrial farming mean?
I actually kind of like that term industrial farming because we have gotten so technologically advanced as farmers. I do everything from a tablet and my smartphone, it seems like nowadays. And the tractor, in the combine, everything's got, I think my husband has 4 monitors in the tractor when he's going. GPS on the tractor, auto steer. So I like to think that industrial farming just means that we've adapted technology really well. You hear of drones, and I think every kid's getting a drone for Christmas this year. So we use those in agriculture as well. That's how we scout a lot of our fields and things like that. So I think it's agriculture technology.
Okay.
You probably edit that out.
That's no big deal. So you mentioned, the monitors and GPS and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How is that? What's the term I'm looking for? Is that financially feasible for a lot of farmers to do, or is that just kind of, if you have it, you have it, and it's really good that you have it, kind of thing?
That's a funny question. So a couple years ago, it was not. Just like everything, when it's brand new, it's really expensive. But now that we've gotten a couple years down the road, it has become more available. We actually find that we do a lot of return on investment type paperwork and scenarios, and when we put it all on our planner and our combine and everything, the return on investment actually paid for itself. So that's why we did it. So yeah, I think it's definitely available and feasible for farmers to use.
Okay. So kind of deviating off of that, what do you think the future of agriculture is, and who do you think will take us there?
So I think the future of agriculture obviously is, the next generation coming up, the youngsters. Those are really the ones that are implementing the technology portion of it. When my father-in-law owned this farm 3 years ago, he probably would never have done anything with the technology because he didn't know how to use it. Actually, now he won't even run the planter because there's just too much technology in it. So definitely this next younger generation is going to carry agriculture further. There's some ideas and technology stuff that we are going to do coming down the road that's just amazing, that will allow us to produce so much more food on the resources and the land and everything we have available, which is what we have to do to feed the population.
Okay. On that same note, why do you think there is a lack of interest among the younger generation of, our current population, in agriculture, just for, I guess, a lot of kids, they think agriculture and they're, I don't want to farm or anything like that. Why do you think that is?
So I think that is because there's this misconception that the farmer is the old guy in his bib overalls that's just, hand pitching manure out. And if they really understood what we did on a daily basis, that's not how we do things anymore. Milking is all automated now. It's machines that do it for us. It's a lot of farmers sit in an office on a day-to-day basis and do book work and different things, attend a lot of different meetings and things like that. It's not this old, Farmer Bob who's in his overalls anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it. And, a lot of things that you can do in agriculture that aren't necessarily related to the farm either. They have nutritionists for cows. They have agronomists, people who know about plants. There's just so much you can do. And I think if people realize that they wouldn't be so scared of agriculture.
Just thought of a question. I can't remember what it was. Anyways, so what do you think are some of the difficulties that modern farmers face?
So the biggest one is probably the fact that the population doesn't trust us. The population doesn't trust that we're trying to make a good food supply, a safe food supply for them. They don't understand what we do. They don't understand what GMOs are. Then a big thing is with technology and all the social media that we have is the misconceptions that travel along with that. So anybody and everybody is allowed to write a blog now, and that's a lot of the way that people are finding their information is from blogs, which is just personal belief and information. So I think that's really harming us. Word travels a little too fast sometimes too with those blogs that aren't necessarily the truth. So that's going to be a struggle. Farmers are trying to get on top of it. There's a lot of farm blogs out there to follow. I try to Facebook and blog myself just to try and get the public active in what we do on a daily basis. But there's only so much of us for the rest of the population, so
Yeah.
that's going to be difficult.
Okay. I remember my question now. So, in terms of kind of years, when do you think American agriculture as a whole underwent, I guess, massive technical and ideological changes? Like does that happen all the time, or does it happen 20 years ago and that was it? When do you think that occurred?
I think it does happen all the time. I think if you probably talk to some of the older generation, they went through some of these things, back then. But I think that the massive amount of communication we do now per internet is really kind of what struck that hard. The massive amounts of internet communication that goes on. Things like that didn't happen back when, Grandpa owned the farm. That just means of communication were a whole lot different then. So I definitely think the social media and everything is really what made it that way.
Okay. So in your opinion, how difficult would it be for someone to start a first generation farm?
So in this day and age, that's not an easy thing to do, that's for sure. Just the basis on land availability, on having equity. A big thing on farms is having equity and some sort of means of supplying that farm with an income as well. So dairy farming in particular, but also crop farming has had some tough years last year, this year particularly, to where a lot of these farmers haven't taken checks in a couple of years. So that would be pretty tough to start a first generation farm, although there are some people that are doing it and doing it pretty successfully too. So if you have the passion into it and the drive, anything's a go.
Okay. So when you say farmers have been struggling, do you think that would have an impact on the next generation taking over the farm?
Absolutely. So that's what we've seen as we took over the farm about 3 years ago. We didn't necessarily, it's not, everybody thinks that, Grandpa just hands you the farm or it just passes down a generation. But because of some of the struggles and, bad times that farmers have had lately, we took on a lot of debt as well when we bought the farm. So starting out in a large amount of debt is hard to overcome for young people, especially that have young families and things to grow as well. So yeah, I think that is gonna harm the farms a little bit. They're going to have to crawl their way out a little bit before they really get going. So it'll be interesting to see. It might slow down growth a little bit. Might keep people kind of steady until they get over that hump and can grow again. So might be a generation thing. We might see a couple years where we don't grow, and then all of a sudden people can start growing again. So.
Forgot my question. Do you have any questions?
No, not really. You've been thinking the same things as me.
So, what do you think the reason? So, like a lot of farms nowadays, they're massive compared to what farmers had, 10, 20 years ago.
Yep.
Why do you think that the farms are getting larger, but the number of farmers is decreasing? Do you think that's related at all?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go into that. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the banks want you to grow, to have that equity, to be able to get supplies in cheaper. So it's kind of that mentality, the larger you are, the cheaper you can get things, the cheaper you can produce your product. That also comes into play with farms as well. And it's not like Grandpa used to just have, 10 cows and 3 pigs and 4 sheep. We don't do that anymore. It's really specialized. You really learn the tricks and how things have become, and you just really specialize in one area, and then I think you just grow in that area. I think a little bit of it too is the fact we were talking earlier about how young kids just don't want to get into agriculture. They don't want anything to do with agriculture anymore. And you see that with some of the farmers who don't have the next generation wanting to take over the farm anymore. That next generation, there's a lot of opportunity for them. There's a lot of other jobs that they can go do that are sitting in office and pay pretty good. So yeah, agriculture doesn't look so great to them.
Yeah.
So that's understandable, and I think that's why a lot of those farms are going under. And then, the larger farms are absorbing them basically, so.
Okay. So when you say, farms are specializing, would it be better for someone to specialize in one thing, or do you think it'd be better for somebody to, they're, a really good mechanic, but they're also really good herdsmen? Do you think they should only be a mechanic or only a herdsman, or do you think it's better for someone, financially to do both?
So we're going down the road of people only doing one thing, so really getting specialized in being a mechanic and knowing these tractors in and out, or being a herdsman and all you specialize and focus on is the cows. And we're seeing a lot more of people coming out of college and actually getting jobs on farms. They really specialized in breeding when they were in college, so a farm might hire them specifically just to breed all their cows on their farm. It's becoming that more, everybody has their own kind of job on a farm anymore than doing all the jobs on the farm. So I think that could be a good thing. It will be interesting. It will make people a lot better at what they do. So.
That's all I have on these. You got any additional questions? Any questions you have for us?
I don't think so.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. I'm glad you did loan years. They were good at that.
Yeah. Well, we
Steve
didn't do a formal interview.
Gotcha.
I live just down the road from where they were harvesting. Yeah, if you ever wondered, this is what I do on my weekends.
What size parlor is that on you?
Seven on each side. Hey, they're gonna get let out.
We're coming. Although they're my favorite, so I might have to put a few.